Hey everyone, my name is Dillon Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for GeekVibesNation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast. And I am very excited to be here with you once again for a very special bonus episode talking about one of my favorite labels in the game right now. I am talking about Kino Lorber Studio Classics. Now, as I've said before, they're one of my favorite labels in the game. A large part and because they are one of the labels putting out the most volume of stuff at a pretty high quality. Now, everything they release is not gold, as you'll find today, but they are a label that offers me so much variety. I just can't get enough of it. And we have talked about a large slate of their titles on our main show that I host with my co-host Mike Vaughn on the Video Addict. This is just a special bonus episode to go through some of the releases from May and June of this year, 2023, that we have not covered on the main show, just to kind of give you some more titles to pick through. So we have a nice stack of titles here that have not been covered. I'm just going to go through these. I'm going to focus on the few lingering May titles and round out the June and go in alphabetical order, and it's going to be a great time. I'm just going to start right off, and this is a 1989 feature originally put out by Paramount, and this is The Experts with John Travolta and his Ari Gross, who he's a character actor that I've seen in a lot of stuff, but he is not someone I would have thought of as kind of more of a co-lead with John Travolta in the 80s, but it's a fun role for him. But so this is not one I had seen before. It is directed by Dave Thomas, who you might know from Strange Brew or Bob and Doug McKenzie. And I mentioned that because there is a new interview with Dave Thomas on this. It runs about 13 minutes, which is a nice reflection on the movie. But this movie is pretty wild. It's one of those high concept comedies where you just kind of have to go with the logic of stuff. This is set in the USSR, where they are trying to kind of plan an infiltration of American values and get their agents ready to infiltrate American society, but they feel that they are pretty much behind the curve on what actual Americans do. So they kind of kidnap surreptitiously these two Americans who are kind of club promoters. They wake up in what they think is kind of the middle of nowhere, I believe Kansas, but is actually a facsimile of a small town in USA that's more kind of out of the 50s and the 80s, which this was made. And so these two leading men just believe that they are here to open up a club in this kind of middle of nowhere town, not knowing that they're in the USSR, trying to help these potential agents and stuff learn about American culture and everything. But it's a comedy, and within this kind of narrative, there's the Russians kind of learn to kind of embrace American culture and all that stuff and kind of break free of the shackles of communism, while these two friends and club promoters who are kind of doofuses, they kind of their friendship grows and they kind of become more solid foundationally as characters instead of just kind of goof offs. So it's kind of a silly premise, but it's fun. You have John Travolta's future wife Kelly Preston here as his love interest, and a lot of other kind of little small character actors that you'll recognize. But yeah, this one, it is quite a bit of fun. It's not the best comedy from the 80s. It's kind of more overlooked out of Travolta's filmography, but it is worth a watch. It did give me quite a few chuckles, and if you are kind of just more in kind of those 80s kind of silly comedy vibes, this more than does the trick. And this Blu-ray is really nice. I've mentioned that it has the new interview with Dave Thomas. It also has comes from a 4K scan of the 35mm original camera negative, and it looks really nice. There are pretty much no nicks or scratches or anything like that have been left on this. It looks really nice. It sounds really good. The kind of 80s soundtrack that they are working with comes through great. And it has some trailers and stuff for everything and so forth. But the Dave Thomas interview, which is kind of filmed, self-filmed on a kind of a Zoom setup, it works out really well, and he has some really nice reflections on the material. So The Experts, if you're a fan of 80s comedies, this fits in nicely, and it's a good bit of fun. This next one Kino, they seem to have a love for Burt Reynolds, and this is no exception. We have his new release of Hustle, not a new film, from 1975, which this is from the great Robert Aldridge, who did The Longest Yard, which they also released in May. On 4K, which my colleague Mike Vaughn talked about on the main show, and I'll link all of our previous discussions in the description. But I wouldn't say this is as good of an effort as The Longest Yard, which I also watched recently, and I think it holds up. But Hustle, this kind of made me think that it might be a comedy, but I was way off base. This is more kind of like a tale of corruption and crime and everything. It starts out with the murder of a young woman, and Burt Reynolds plays a cop who, he's not completely corrupt, but he's kind of like jaded by the system. He's dating a French prostitute who he met over in France and is brought over with him, and played by Catherine Deneuve, and their kind of relationship is, it's passionate, but it's also kind of unsteady because each of them kind of are keeping each other at arm's distance. And all within this framework is just this case of this young girl who's been found dead and trying to figure out who is responsible for her death. And it's kind of one of those tales where it leads up the ladder of corruption to the highest powers of political office. It's kind of one of those things. And there's a lot of really great characters in here. Eddie Albert from Green Acres. Ernest Borgnine's in this. There's so many, Eileen Brennan, Paul Wakefield, Ben Johnson. So many great people in here. And I do think this is a pretty entertaining movie. The character that Burt Reynolds plays, he kind of gets on my nerves a little bit, just because he's kind of like, he is such an asshole, and the way he goes about his relationship with the Catherine Deneuve character is very cringeworthy at times, and definitely not consensual at all times, or the way they portray power dynamics and stuff sometimes just it has not aged well. Otherwise, it's a pretty compelling movie. I think it kind of reminds me a little bit of like the film Hardcore, which I know Kino will be re-releasing here in a few months. But Hustle, it's a pretty good. It's a good example of like the crime mystery thriller like genre. It's just, there are some elements that keep it like from being great in my eyes. But this comes from a 4K scan of the 35 millimeter original camera negative, which is good, but I did have some issues with it. I feel like this may have been a title that has been kind of degrained a little bit, and it kind of looks a little bit unnatural at times. There's especially a scene at the beginning where Burt Reynolds and Catherine Deneuve were like speaking across from a table from each other. That looked very weird and unnatural, but I could see grain in other shots, but it kind of seemed like there may have been some DNR applied when it did not need to be, which kind of ruined the picture some for me. It still looks probably better than it ever has on home entertainment, but I feel that this does not look as good as it could. But the sound is pretty solid. This does come with an audio commentary from two Robert Aldridge historians, and they give some good insights, and otherwise just some TV spots and trailers and all that stuff. So if you're a Burt Reynolds fan, it's a good movie. The DNR with the transfer just kind of is a little bit irritating, but it is what it is. Sometimes it happens, but it's still a solid release. My last title for May, like I said, I only had 3 stragglers for May, is an interesting 1986 movie called Kamikaze, which is from producer and co-writer Luc Besson, who people might know from like The Fifth Element and Leon the Professional and all kinds of stuff. He's a prolific French filmmaker and creator and all that stuff. So this one is interesting because it's kind of Black Mirror-ish almost. I know this predates Black Mirror, but it involves like a scientist who he's kind of like has big ideas for his like ambitions in technology, but he gets let go by his company. But he has developed this technology which he starts implementing when he kind of starts spiraling, where he can target people who are on camera, like news anchors and stuff like that, with kind of like this blast that like instantly like explodes their insides. And so he's like starts just taking out like all these reporters and news anchors and stuff from the comfort of his home. And there's like a detective who is trying to track him down and stop him and like figure out who it is. So it's a really interesting thriller. I wouldn't quite call it horror. It is more of a thriller, but there's like some interesting or like some gnarly gore, which like horror fans will like. The narrative is pretty solid. It's like you kind of have to like just give yourself over to this idea, but otherwise the characters aren't making too many stupid decisions. Outside of the main villain has a niece who is trying to kind of like is kind of a bit too oblivious to what her uncle might be doing for my taste, but whatever. Otherwise, pretty solid movie, pretty solid thriller that holds up. And this is not noted from coming from a new scan or restoration or anything, but it holds up really nicely. I've never seen this before, but there's not too much in the way of damage or anything. Really nice, clean picture. Sounds great. It's in the original French with optional English subtitles. There's some really solid special features. There's an audio commentary. There is a 26-minute interview with the director, and then a 34-minute documentary on the movie itself. So there's, in addition to the like pretty much baseline commentary that Kino tries to put out, there are other featurettes which are really interesting. So Kamikaze, if it sounds interesting to you, if you like kind of those like sci-fi thrillers, definitely one to keep on your radar. And now I will move on to June. And I'm going to start kind of a tearjerker of sorts. This is Duet For One with the great Julie Andrews. And this also stars Max von Sydow and Alan Bates. Just standard art in our template in here. Julie Andrews plays a famous musician who has recently been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and this is kind of her going through her life trying to like deal with this diagnosis, knowing that her body is going to start failing her, how this impacts her marriage, and kind of like she starts revealing like she loves her husband, but then she also kind of reveals that she knows that he has like cheated on her in the past, and how she wants him to kind of live now that her body is failing her, like what she wants out of him, and not holding him, like not trying to punish him for what he's done in the past, but appreciating their present, and also pushing people away, knowing that she's deteriorating. And then she's also seeing a therapist played by Max von Sydow, who is kind of trying to help her with her mental faculties and not let her mind deteriorate like with this diagnosis before her body can, and just kind of how she wrestles with that. As you would expect, Julie Andrews is fantastic. She is really great. There's also an appearance from a young Liam Neeson as a lover she takes up, which is a pretty unexpected but welcome sight from him. And while I said this is a tearjerker, I would not say it's overly maudlin. It's a very it's sad, but it is not a rip your heart out and manipulative type of sad. It is more just kind of like a bone deep sadness. You kind of like steep in it, but it's not like ripping you apart. But it is a very interesting movie. I think even at an hour and 47 minutes, it's kind of paced pretty well. You are staying with Julie Andrews' perspective for most of the time, which is great because I love her. And it just doesn't get overly saccharine, which I appreciate. And this comes from a 2K scan from the 35mm interpositive. There is a little bit of softness here and there, but overall it's a really solid transfer. This comes with an audio commentary from film historian Daniel Kramer and some trailers. But this is a really great release. I'm trying to slowly work my way through Julie Andrews' filmography, so I was glad to knock this one off the list. And Julie Andrews fans will definitely appreciate this one. Next up, we have a re-release, which I really love this movie. This is Juggernaut, which Kino Studio Classics put out several years ago, and then it went out of print, I believe, 2 or 3 years ago. I believe in like 2021. So I know this was kind of getting some hefty bids on the secondhand market for people who did want to pick this one up. And this release, I believe the original release may have been on like a single layer Blu-ray disc. I believe this is updated to a double layer, like Blu-ray 50. So a little bit probably better compression and everything like that. But then there's also an added commentary track as well. So even if you do have the old release, if you're a fan, you might want to upgrade just for the commentary alone. But this movie is fantastic. It stars Omar Sharif and Richard Harris, along with like Anthony Hopkins and a bunch of other great actors. But this is about, it's a very simple tale. There's like a luxury liner who is out at sea that has had bombs planted on it, and there's like a mad villain who is going to set off these bombs if he doesn't have his terms met. And then you have like this Richard Harris plays this guy who could potentially defuse these bombs, and just kind of him working to defuse these bombs before time runs out. And this is a very gripping movie. It kind of escalates when it needs to escalate. You have just like the which wire do I cut type of moment. Like if you love that type of stuff, this is like tremendous. I love that. I really love this experience. It's an hour and 50 minutes, but it does not feel it. It goes by in a breeze. This was one of my favorites that I watched on this whole video. So I'm glad they re-released. This is a really great discovery. And there's not a new scan, like I said, but and I don't have the old release to compare it to, but this is a really nice picture. There's like some kind of digital noise here and there, some like little nicks and specks here and there, but overall really good picture, really good sound. The new commentary track from Stephen Mitchell and Nathaniel Thompson, two film historians, is really informative. So if you missed out and this sounds like your shit, definitely check this out because it's really entertaining. I'm going to cover my next two as a pair because they are starring the same pair. Is two from Pierre Richard and Gerard Depardieu. I'm going to butcher these in every way imaginable. These are two French films, La Chevre and Les Comperes. So these two gentlemen star. I'll start with. I want to make sure I'm getting these right. So the first one. Okay, this one. Okay, La Chevre. This one is a tale of these two. There's the daughter of like a big important businessman gets kidnapped at the beginning of the movie, and she is kind of known to be kind of a spacey, screwball-y, and having bad luck. And whenever she gets kidnapped, after months of searching for her, someone comes up with the idea that there is a man in the company who is has as bad of a luck as she does, which is this man right here, Pierre Richard. That maybe if they put him in that same situation, he can experience the similar bad luck and lead them to her. So these two go on a kind of a trip to find her, which is just basically Pierre Richard constantly having bad things happen to him, but then slowly getting closer to where this girl might be and finding her. And it's a screwball comedy. It's very silly, but it's very funny. And this was later remade in America as Pure Luck with Martin Short and Danny Glover, which I believe my co-host Mike Bond covered from Mill Creek sometime last summer as part of a 2-pack, I believe. I have not seen that one, but they reteam in Les Comperes, where it's almost like a Mamma Mia situation. Once again, someone is kidnapped, but the mother of this boy who gets kidnapped, she calls upon these two men, either of which could potentially be this boy's father, to kind of like each of them to go try to find her son. And they end up teaming up, and like they kind of bicker about once they finally realize they're searching for the same boy, kind of bicker about who might actually be the father while trying to save their potential son. And then it's once again just a screwball comedy. The dynamics between these two trying to find someone, they're both very funny, admittedly. This one was remade later as Father's Day with Robin Williams and Billy Crystal. Have not seen that one either, but these two, if you enjoy French comedies, they're pretty funny. They are both from 2K restorations by Gaumont, and they both look really nice. It is the original French audio sounds really great. There is a film commentaries on each of them from Howard S. Berger, Steve Mitchell, and Nathaniel Thompson. 3 film historians are on each of them. And other than that, there's just trailers and stuff. But these really tickled me. So if you like French comedies, they're both kind of silly screwballs classics. 2 more titles. Okay. So this one is, I know Mike and I talk about our steamy titles. So I'll just say Prison Girls in 3D. So this is basically like, okay, if you want to watch porn, but you're embarrassed, you can get this and pretend like you're just like watching, just like, oh, it's just a film, like it's artistic and stuff. Like this is just a women in prison film that, from the very like opening scene, like you have a gratuitous shower scene of just like full frontal nudity, women talking and like kind of arguing, and then there's the thinnest of plots. There's basically no plot, but of just these women are they're given like a weekend pass to go from prison to like go do whatever, but while they're out, they just end up having sex with anyone and everyone and each other and all that stuff. So it's just a series of sex scenes, and like that's not hardcore, but just like a lot of just nakedness. And I didn't love it because like there's a lot like if you're gonna have this, you don't need to have like also bits of like sexual assault and stuff, which is ridiculous. But if you want to see women naked also in 3 dimensions, so if you want to feel like you can reach out and touch the bare body, here you go. They've done it here because this has been restored in 3D. There's also a 2D version. So if you don't feel like watching 3D, this also comes with the 3D glasses. There's also the like the red blue 3D glasses, or you have the like real like I think it's called anaglyphic that's the polarized is like the legit, and then anaglyphic is the red cyan glasses. So if you have a legit 3D television, this will probably be better for you, but the red cyan 3D, it works well enough. The 2D also is fine. None of them look great, I would say. That still looks pretty ragged for what it is, but it has been restored. It looks nice enough. And there's a few special features for this. So there's a commentary track and some deleted scenes and a trailer and stuff. Not my favorite, but if you are just hard up for some naked women, here you go. And it's the 3D is a novel experience, admittedly, so go for it. But you know if this is for you. If you get giddy thinking about this, go ahead, enjoy yourself. But my final title is The White Buffalo with Charles Bronson, in which he plays the legendary Wild Bill Hickok, who is in kind of his later years is kind of a elder statesman type role for Bronson. This does have a double-sided cover art, which is pretty cool here. But this kind of deals with his kind of tenuous friendship that he kind of gets with, I believe it's, I want to get the name right, I believe it's Crazy Horse. Yes, it is Crazy Horse. And this is kind of like an older Wild Bill Hickok who is kind of haunted by these visions of the titular white buffalo, and he needs to kind of go seek it out and kind of learn, like put himself at peace, put his visions at peace. And there's also Crazy Horse. His daughter has been, I believe, killed by the white buffalo, so he is a father also on his way to like try to put this kind of haunting presence to rest. This is not the strongest movie. There's some really interesting things within it, but kind of it's all over the place narratively, and it's kind of a little bit messy. Some of the performances are solid, but the narrative is kind of like iffy. The dialogue is delivered well. Bronson does good. Who plays Crazy Horse? Will Sampson from One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest does a fine job. But this, I don't know, it's just very messy and kind of like this could have been developed in a much more interesting way, which kind of resonated more on a character note. This was produced by Dino De Laurentiis, who seemed to be going more for spectacle. They did build like a legitimate like life-size white buffalo because they had just kind of come off the 1970s King Kong, and I guess they were just looking for more kind of spectacle. And the ending fight is like confrontation, I'd say, not fight, is cool, but just narratively up until that it's just very erratic. So this could have been better. I think the reviews that I saw on this had this like in the 20s for Rotten Tomato. I think that's a little bit low, but it is just kind of a little bit more messy. So if you're a Bronson fan, I think you'll enjoy it, but it's not the strongest that I've seen from him. But this does come from an HD master. It's a 2K scan of the 35mm inner positive. It looks pretty nice. There's some softness and specs still remaining here and there, but it holds up really nicely. So it is a pretty good release. You get this slipcover. You get a audio commentary from a Charles Bronson expert. You get some trailers. Very good release. So all of these releases this month were pretty good. Not all of them, all the movies hit for me, but the releases were good. So if you're a Kino fan, they keep knocking out of the park. I think there's a little bit of something for everyone within this, and really great month. So they have a lot of great stuff coming up. We're going to be covering that on our main show of The Video Attic with my colleague Michael Vaughn. I'll be doing some more of these videos and some other labels as well. If you enjoy this, please let me know in the comments what you're looking forward to, what you like about the video, share it with friends, what you want me to cover in the future, anything like that. Always love your feedback. And like I said, I'll be doing more of these in the future, but thank you for tuning in, and until next time, enjoy these movies.